Marcille is actually meta-defining. To some of you, Marcille is a must pull, and to others, Marcille is a must only use when she is absolutely needed and one of your friends has it on support. Some excuses may be she's a collab character, and you should pull for the rarity. Other excuses may be I need to clear content, ISCC, content, high risk, content. Well, I am here to convince you. Marcille is a splash caster. In case anyone has forgotten, a splash caster is the equivalent of a free Michelin star chef. They cost way too much to invite and they spend 3 hours to cook up absolutely mid. Sorry. But in the end, it's hard to deny that splash casters were never actually used for their AoE potential anymore. It's pretty much all utility, such as Mostima Global Slow, Dust Ink minions, and yada yada yada. So some of you might be thinking, oh, she's different. She specializes in AoE attacks, or oh, she's used for her utility. Both of these points are correct. Marcille has two playstyles, a put her down and go to work playstyle, or put her down and witness World War III on a minor scale. Marcille Talents introduces a new mechanic called Mana. Mana as a mechanic is pretty much just SP, but will only recover when the character is not deployed. You can check the mana meter on the character's portrait whilst being ready to be deployed. Another way for you to check her mana value accurately is simply placing her down and looking at her skill. Mana is pretty much her skill points, but just works differently, I guess. One thing about this is that you don't really need to max out this mana value to deploy her. But this also brings up the issue that for her to be at max damage potential, you'll have to wait for her mana to a reasonable threshold where she still has backup mana left for her skill and to trigger her talent. And to max mana if you are using skill 3. I will get to that soon. Anyway, let's actually talk about her talent. Her talent 1 basically just makes all of her skills consume mana. How much mana will be specified to the skill, making mana not regenerable naturally whilst on the field, and will only regen like SP when she is off the field. When she has mana, her attack is increased by 20% and her AoE expands. A pretty standard talent to work with mana and her overall kit. Nothing too special. You're hopefully always going to have mana anyways, so it's pretty much a guaranteed 20% attack and extra AoE range, taking her 914 attack to 1096 and 0.8 tiles increase for her range. Her talent 2 provides her with 25 manas to start, and when she has her whole squad, everyone from the anime gains 25 attack speed and 25% defense. Again, a very fine talent that works with her overall kit, and also works with her squad. Now, before any of you say, oh, but other operators buffs they buff indiscriminately. Guys, it's not that deep. Even though you're forced to bring all of her friends for the extra stats, it doesn't make her a bad operator. Granted, I'm not saying that 25 initial mana makes it a good talent, but it certainly doesn't make it bad. To put it simply, if I were to rate it out of 5, 1 being absolute sh**, 3 being good enough, and 5 being what the f*** is this, it's a solid 2.9. I don't want to talk about this talent anymore. Now, a few things that I want to go over with her talent and mana mechanic are pretty important. If Marcille isn't able to be deployed at the time, her mana will not regen. I'm not actually sure what the wiki meant by this. I went on my CN account and snatched a Marcille to see if he meant something like, or if you have no SP or whatnot. But no, she still regens mana regardless of DP. I'm assuming unable to deploy, similar to being chopped by this guy. Other than that, I don't know. Her mana can be carried throughout the battle, where if she has leftover mana left before you retreat her, she will keep the mana she has left instead of resetting her mana value back to 0. Her mana can be restored whilst she is on the field, using SP regen skills from other operators. They'll treat her mana as SP. Overall, her talents are not bad. Epic. Now, before I talk about her skills, I want to inform you of one more mechanic: chanting, or chanting for Americans. Chanting as a mechanic kinda sucks balls. It pretty much just immobilizes you for a short duration without anything to divert enemy attention away from her. Chanting duration is also dependent on the skill, and to my knowledge, there's no way to speed this process up. She's a pretty AFK operator anyway, so this mechanic can really only screw you over in certain situations where you might need her to attack immediately after she is deployed. Now, let's actually talk about her skills. Skill 1 will force her to chant for a short time before she activates her skill. When she activates her skill, she will receive an additional 140% attack stat increase, and on every attack, she will consume 2 mana. And when there are no enemies in her range, she becomes a healer. This skill is pretty much an ammo-based skill depending on how much mana she has, but ultimately, it's just not worth it. This skill isn't anything great. It's very versatile, being able to damage and heal, but the numbers just isn't too good. If you really like her, then sure. Her skill 2 will force her to chant for 11 seconds before eating 35 mana to summon a familiar to attack. Her attack is increased by 100% and attacks slow all targets that she hits for 0.5 seconds. When you deactivate her skill and activate it the second time, the familiar is enhanced, granting her more attack range plus 60 attack speed and stuns the main target that she hits for 0.5 seconds. This skill will have unlimited duration when you activate it again. This is her main skill, an AFK AoE cannon that has pretty consistent utility with her slow and stun against fairly mini elite thing enemy and below. She can dish out pretty good numbers and hold her own with her utility. Her range changing to a marksman sniper is actually huge for her. Not because these type of ranges are just that overpowered, we have flingers for that. It's just having a splash caster with this range compared to others. The difference is really big. It lets you place her in a lot more spots than usual. Who knew having 3 more squares could make such a difference? Her attack stat increase isn't anything too crazy, it's just fine, but her attack speed stat from face value is probably the best thing you'll get out of this skill. Since attacking faster not only makes her do much more DPS, it also makes her apply her slow and stun much quicker. Overall, this skill is probably the skill you'll use the most. Pretty good for AFK clears. Her skill 3 makes her chant for 5 seconds before consuming 8 mana to drop a nuke in front of her, dealing 390% attack as arts damage to any enemy caught inside the explosion. She is able to chant for an additional 10 seconds, and after she chants for a total of 15 seconds, she will eat all of her mana supply, and for every 8 mana value eaten by her, she will do an additional explosion. Now, on paper, this may sound like the next prime Westerdale DPS champion. Well, absolutely not. The damage difference is practically abysmally different, and I can't even bring up the arguments that she is doing AoE damage, because Westerdale also does bloody AoE damage. Using a video as reference for some numbers, their numbers are wildly different. Even if you say, oh, maybe the big guy has a bunch of arts resist, and you're right. This guy has a total of 30 arts resist, but even if I put all the calculated numbers side by side, her total damage still isn't comparable at all. Now, some of you may be saying that it's unfair to compare her with a physical damage dealer. And you're right. but this just brings up a different argument of her exceeding in burst damage and not necessarily total damage. And that's something you can look into yourselves, because anyway, this skill is a very niche skill. It's pretty much only useful in certain situations where enemies are kind of just standing there. You can use this for boss DPS too, but you got to hope that she can chant peacefully. Even if she can chant peacefully, it still needs good timing, since, you know, the 50-second chant before actually doing the damage. One good quality about this skill is that it does let you activate it any time you want. So it technically works as a heli drop skill, so it gives you some freedom of choice. Fun fact, each explosion that she releases has an interval of 0.45 seconds. Overall, her skill 3 is a niche burst damage skill that can only be used probably only 1 or 2 times a stage. I don't necessarily think it's a bad skill, I just think that its use doesn't really exceed in any content. Granted, there are a few stages that it could be good, but again, a bunch of characters can also clear a big wave of big enemies. Her module isn't anything too crazy, but it still works really well with her kit. Having a total of 40 initial mana compared to 25 can be quite a big difference. When timings are tight, this module can be really important. One more thing that makes it a must-have is taking away 8 deployment cost. This, from face value, might not look really good since it does nothing to make her do more damage, but it is really important. Like I said earlier, that Splashcaster's deployment cost is abysmally large. In the end, should you pull her? Well, the obvious answer is yes. Why would you not pull her? She's a limited collab unit that might never come again. She was never a bad unit at the end of the day. So yeah, you should pull her. Now, will I be pulling her? Yes. Hi, it's me. Thank you if you somehow made it this far, and what did I say about Nymph, guys? The #1 pick for CC3? I'm kidding. But yeah, my coping for CC was never in vain. And I swear to God, if I see another saving for lap alter comment, I'm kidding. Do whatever you want, I'm saving for her too. That's it, goodbye.